Hey everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at a fun deck from the 2007 format. That's going to be Rhyperior. Now, the idea behind a Rhyperior deck is you are going to deck your opponent out. And while this was not a super popular deck in 2007, I think the deck does have some viability. And if people aren't prepared or they're not quite sure how to play against it, you're going to catch a lot of people off guards. On top of that, it's just really fun discarding your opponent's deck, and one of the nice things about the 2007 format is they don't have a ton of resources to avoid it. There's not like Rocket's admin, so it's not like they can just throw their whole hand back into their deck. There is Hole and Farmer in the format, but it's not super popular. So it's just a fun deck to play, and I've been finding a decent amount of success with it in some of my testing games. So once again here, just starting off, the main idea of the deck is that we're going to be using this Rhyperior to discard the top 3 cards of our opponent's deck. It is literally impossible for the deck to win on taking prizes, so the only way that you are going to win the game is by decking your opponent out. So to do that, we're going to want to recycle the Rhyperior. We're going to try to play it down as many times as possible. So to do this, we avoid playing Rare Candy in the deck, and we just play 4 Rhyhorn, 4 Rhydon, 4 Rhyperior. The Under Evolve stages aren't critical, but the big thing is we do play the Rhyhorn that has a single retreat cost, which helps out the deck a lot, just so we can get it out of the active spot. Next up, we play 3 copies of Holon's Magnemite. Now, we do play the Holon's Magnemite because we do play Minim in the deck. And Minim is going to be an important addition, which I'll talk about here in a second. But the Holon's Magnemite is just a really searchable energy that we can get off of Holon Mentor. We play 3 copies of Minim. Now, Minim is going to serve a couple of different functions with the deck. The main idea is that we're going to use Sniff Out, and a lot of the time we're going to grab one of 2 cards. The first is going to be a Mr. Briny's Compassion to recycle a Rhyperior. And then the second one is going to be Hole on Circle. Now, Hole on Circle, I think, is one of the coolest cards in the deck because it literally stops your opponent from attacking. So when you're playing it in a deck that doesn't attack at all, the idea is it's going to give you a free turn, and free turn is hopefully going to be another 3 or another 6 cards off the top of your opponent's deck. The other card, there's some other uses for Minim in matchups where they play like Cessation Crystal, which is obviously a big hindrance to the deck. You can grab back cards like Windstorm, or if you just have a really bad hand, you can grab back some sort of consistency card like Hole and Transceiver or the Copycat. Next up, I play a 2/2 Porygon 2-line. I'm going to say I'm not convinced Porygon 2 is the right card for the deck, but I am going to say that some sort of consistency engine I think is important. I debated trying maybe some sort of Macargo Ambipom deck, but there's pros and cons to both Porygon 2 and then Macargo. Now, I do play a single copy of Ambipom. Ambipom is just really good if you, let's say, have a Hole on Mentor that you need to burn, or you're trying to get your hand size down. You can play Ambipom onto your bench, use Porygon 2 to draw back up to 6, and then you can Ambipom for that 7th card. Ambipom should never really be a dead draw, because as soon as you get it, hopefully you'll have a chance to play it down and then draw that card right away. It is sort of weak to Cessation Crystal first off, and then of course the Lunatone Soul Rock combo, which both of those do see some play in the 2007 format, but I think just playing the Ambipom, the risks with it outweigh, the rewards outweigh the risks with it. Single copy of Jirachi. I did have a second Jirachi in the deck, but I ultimately dropped it for that Ambipom just to give me a little bit more draw power. Jirachi obviously combos incredibly well with Hole on Circle, where you can still be Wishing Starring and then sitting behind Hole on Circle. Now, of course, like any deck in the 2007 format, we rely very heavily on the Hole on engine. So we play 4 Transceiver, 3 Mentor, 1 Adventurer, 1 Scientist, and one that's not always very popular is going to be Hole and Farmer. Now, obviously, we cannot get basic energy back because we don't play any in the deck, but just having a Rhyperior line getting knocked out is important to send back. In some matchups, you're going to need to send back a Minim, Holin's Magnemite. Maybe that's a Jirachi. It just gives us a little bit of utility. And then, of course, we can send back. We can always just discard it to any of the other Holon cards. So I haven't really had any issues with Holon Farmer. It's been an okay card. I think it's worth playing, but it's not needed in every matchup, and sometimes it does feel like kind of a dead card. But like I said, usually I'm just able to pitch it to something else in those situations. 4 copies of Copycat. 2007 is very... one of the things you'll find in the format is that hand sizes get very large very quickly. There's a lot of Holon cards flying around, and then on top of that, there's not really any Rockets admins or in sort of cards in the deck. So Copycat, you're always going to get a lot of value out of Copycat. Now, 4 copies of Mr. Brandy's Compassion, used to pick up the Rhyperior. Now, something I do want to talk about is the Rhyperior, it's no slouch. It's got 140 hit points. And what I found in a lot of my matchups is that I can actually just throw Rhyperior in the active spot, and it can absorb a hit. There's very few things in the format that can do 150 damage in one shot. And some matchups, they have to even two-shot it. But essentially, I'll throw it into the active spot, let it take a hit, and then I'll Brinies it up on the following turn. So that way I'm getting one free turn, or one additional turn, with no real downside. It's not like my opponent's just running through my Pokemon, taking prize after prize after prize. That Rhyperior, I don't know, I guess I call it a Rhyperior stall strategy, is actually really effective in buying yourself additional time to try to deck them out. 4 copies of Master Ball. Essentially, the Master Ball combos very well with the Porygon 2 engine. Now, I do want to say, and I probably should have said this at the start of the video, was I got the Rhyperior idea from somebody that was playing it on the ladder. I switched up the list, I think, a decent amount, but the Rhyperior, obviously, and then the Porygon 2, Master Ball, Hole and Circle combo were all his. I believe I added the Minim to the deck, and then I want to say like just the supporter counts and everything are mine too, but definitely the Rhyperior idea, the Porygon 2, the Hole and Circle was all his, and then obviously the Brandy's Compassion and I think Super Scoop Up. Those are pretty common, but the Master Ball idea was definitely his too, and the idea is you just play Master Ball and then you it's just a card that you can burn very easily with Porygon 2. It combos very well with Ambipom if you just hit an Ambipom and you just want to trade it in for a free draw. I have tested a decent amount, and a lot of the times you do want to play your supporters for the Holon engine. So throwing down a Master Ball to basically not take up your supporter spot. That's why I prefer it over Celios in this deck. 4 copies of Hole and Circle. Now, obviously, Hole and Circle is very good for the deck. The weakness to Hole and Circle is that it's a stadium, which means Windstorm counters it, another stadium counters it. There's plenty of ways that the opponent can get around it other than just giving you the free turn. One of the things that I found in my testing is I actually try to hold the Hole and Circle at the start of the game, and then I try to use that initial time to use Rhyperior to burn through as many of their stadiums and Windstorms as I possibly can. If players aren't very familiar with the deck, I find it very common they're just discarding like cards like Windstorm or stadiums to the Holing cards, just thinking they're not very important. Obviously, as people get more accustomed to the deck and how to play against it, that's not going to happen. But yeah, usually I just try to hold them until the later stages of the game, usually until my opponent has 2 or 3 prizes left, and I just try to burn as many of their outs to it as possible with the Rhyperior. 2 Windstorms. Windstorm plays fine. I haven't had too many issues with only 2. Obviously, if I was playing a lot of Cessation decks, I would probably have to up it to 3. It is recyclable through minimum, so it is totally fine. The 2 has played well for me. 1 Celio is just kind of an addition to the 4 Master Balls. Just give me 1 more out here to search out the Pokemon in the deck. And then 1 copy of Scott. I actually added Scott to the deck. I just find it really useful to be able to search out Hole and Circles, especially if I want to search out 2 or 3. Especially if they're able to counter 1, then maybe I can stick the next one or the one after that. but it's nice to grab the Hole in Circle and then a supporter for the following turn, like, you know, say a Hole on Mentor or a Copycat or something like that. And then lastly, I added 2 Scramble Energies to the deck. Now, Scramble Energies might seem counterintuitive to a deck that is not going to win on prizes, but the line of thinking with Scramble is kind of twofold. One, your opponent is a good opponents when they play against a Deckout deck are going to play down as few cards as possible. They're going to try to put one major threat on the board and basically just try not to play any other cards. What Scramble Energy does is it forces your opponent to play additional cards. So if they, let's say they just throw down one Pokemon, you can go Scramble into Rhyperior, and Rhyperior actually hits. For a Scramble Energy, it hits for 80 damage, which is incredibly solid. And like I said, you just cycle it. So you play down Rhyperior, hit them for 80, they hit you back, you Brandy's Compassion the Rhyperior, bring up another Rhyperior, Scramble, hit them for 80 again. It just puts a lot of pressure on them. Second of all, it's another out to Cessation Crystal. If our opponent's trying to be really clever, and they've got something in the active spot with a Cessation Crystal on it, and they're trying to stop us from doing our stuff, Scramble Energy, you can be in a situation where you can just power through a Cessation Crystal and have that out to it other than the Windstorm. Lastly, one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck is prizes. And this is why we play such a thick Rhyperior line, is because you can get bad prizes. And if we prize any piece of this Rhyperior line, we're instantly down to only having 3 Rhyperiors to have access to. And if you get a really bad game where you prize, let's say, 2 Rhyhorn or 2 Rhydon, 2 Rhyperior, you can be in for a rough time. And in these situations, Scramble Energy can give you kind of that Hail Mary to get those cards out of your prizes. But beyond just that, it gives you additional resources. Just taking a prize or taking 2 prizes and getting a supporter, getting a super scoop up, a master ball, a windstorm, a hole in circle, just getting any sort of resource out of the prizes can be very useful for you in the deck. Like I said, Scramble is something I've only been testing the last, I would say, week or so, but so far I've been really liking it, and it's kind of added another element to the deck. So I'm going to say I think the deck's really fun to play. I'm not going to say it's a tier 1 deck by any stretch of the imagination. I think as players get better against playing against it, my win percentage is going to go down. It's been pretty good lately. I don't think I've dropped a game with this deck, but I think that's largely because opponents are not 100% sure how to play against it. Now, I guess the other thing I want to say is, like I said, it's probably not going to be a tier 1 deck. Win percentage is probably going to go down as players get more accustomed playing against it, but it's been a lot of fun to play. I've gotten a couple of rage quits playing it, so be aware you're probably not going to make a ton of friends decking out your opponents, but it's been a really fun deck to play, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video here. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course, I hope to see you in the next video.